The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
In a letter to SEC Chairman Gary Gensler, Congressman Ritchie Torres wrote, quote, "Regulation by enforcement had a dreadful day in court," referring to the summary judgment issued by Judge Analisa Torres in the Ripple SEC case. Joining us now for more is New York Congressman Ritchie Torres. Welcome to the show, Congressman Torres.
Happy to be here.
All right. So you heard a little bit of our last interview here. You're really referencing what's happened in the Ripple SEC case as a landmark decision. Talk to us about why that's your position here.
Well, the decision in the Ripple case represents a rejection of regulation by enforcement. The decision makes two critical distinctions. First, it distinguishes between securities and an asset sold as part of an investment contract, which qualifies as securities. So the decision establishes what I've referred to as the Torres doctrine, based on the judge's name, which holds that digital assets are not in themselves securities, but can be part of investment contracts, which do qualify as securities under the Howey test. Second, makes a distinction between institutional buyers and retail buyers. So if you're an institutional buyer who purchases a crypto token directly from a promoter or an issuer in an initial coin offering, then that transaction qualifies as a security offering. But if you're a retail customer who's purchasing a crypto token on an exchange, that typically is different from an investment contract and therefore falls outside the scope of federal securities law. And so therein lies the challenge. Federal securities law protects institutional investors, but fails to protect retail customers. And that's where the need for legislation comes into place. That underscores the fierce urgency around passing a market structure bill.
Have you received a response from the SEC?
No response from the SEC, and the SEC is typically unresponsive to Congress, particularly under Chair Gensler.
Congressman Torres, you're a straight shooter. You're somebody who always tells things the way you see it. Never one to shy away from controversy. So, got to ask you: do you think Chairman Gensler should maybe find another line of work?
Look, I'm not going to call on Chair Gensler to resign based on a policy disagreement. But if he decides to move on, I certainly won't be mourning his departure. So.
Got it. So, with that said, we talked earlier about with our previous guests about this issue with what Congress needs to do, that it would need to redefine perhaps what it would need to define, if you will, what crypto is, because Chair Gensler sees it as something that can easily fit into previous securities regulation, to the Howey test, et cetera. That's not a problem. It's a security for the most part, with the exception of a couple here. And this would require Congress to actually act. Do you see Congress doing anything in this session? We have an election coming up in 2024. It's almost around the corner, if you will. But what do you think? How fast can you get everyone in Congress together here?
Look, I'm confident that there will be bipartisan action in the House. Whether the Senate will act is an open question. But, I would submit to you that the combination of the Ripple case and a market structure bill would bring us to where we need to be. The Ripple case protects the crypto industry from arbitrary enforcement actions, and a market structure bill would protect retail customers from bona fide bad actors. And that's the combination that we need to enable the crypto industry to succeed.
Cynthia Lummis, a Republican, Kirsten Gillibrand, a fellow Democrat from New York, both in the Senate, both have a piece of legislation out. Do you think something like that could get passed in the House? And if so, if you had to put a time horizon on that, what would it be?
Well, within the House, we're considering two crypto bills by the end of the month. Stablecoin and market structure. Both of those bills are set to be markup. by next week, and I predict that both will have bipartisan support. I suspect the stablecoin bill will have much broader bipartisan support than the market structure bill. But the market structure bill, the need for a market structure bill, has taken on a fierce urgency in light of the latest decision in the Southern District of New York.
So in one of your comments, you refer to Gary Gensler as politicizing the registration process. And I was wondering if you could sort of break down what that means, because I feel like that word is sort of thrown around a lot in reference to Gensler specifically. You know, he's being political, he's politicizing, but what does that mean? Like, what is his political goal here? I'm just curious what you mean by that.
Well, it has multiple meanings, but here's one. You know, a regulator like the SEC, which has immense power, should strive to be merit neutral, right? The proper role of a regulator is not to decide the merits of blockchain technology. That judgment should be left to the market. The role of a regulator should be to protect investors and consumers. And in my opinion, what we've seen from Mr. Gensler is not regulation, it's the weaponization of the SEC against the crypto industry, which he considers useless and which he politically disfavors. And that, to me, is an abuse of power. That's a politicizing of the SEC and the failure to create a workable registration process for crypto companies that are striving to be compliant. Again, that to me is an example of politicizing the agency.
And my other question is just about Congress and, you know, this general sense that, you know, regardless of how incremental or reasonable a proposal is, it just seems really hard to gain momentum in Congress, just given how many other things are going on, how hard it is to sort of gain consensus, how many different views there are. I mean, do you really think that there's just enough momentum in Congress to pass anything before the election, crypto related?
Look, I can only hope, especially if people understand the implications of the latest court decision. You know, the Gensler strategy of litigation over legislation has backfired badly, and it's backfired at the expense of retail customers. You know, we might be in a period of protracted litigation in which retail customers have no protection. And so the only means of protecting them is legislation, is a statutory framework for protecting retail customers in the digital assets marketplace. So I hope that the decision underscores the need for Congress to act and exposes the limits of regulation by enforcement and by litigation.
A story was published this morning that said, you know, Congressman French Hill and Dusty Johnson criticized the SEC's approach to regulating crypto and suggested that the SEC's actions were timed to overshadow and undermine comprehensive legislation. What do you think of these remarks? Do you agree with these two?
I do agree with the criticism, and it does feel to me the actions of the SEC are often politically motivated. The decision, for example, to register Prometheum, which is a trading platform that trades no digital assets, struck me as strange. It seems to me that Prometheum exists purely to be a talking point, purely to create the false impression that there's a viable path to registration for crypto companies, when in fact we all know that's false.
So who in the Democratic Party and in the Democratic caucus there do you think has like-minded thoughts here on, you know, we keep hearing about the Republicans' views on what Gensler should do and passing legislation. We don't hear enough from Democrats, or we don't hear from that many Democrats, you being a shining exception here. What other Democrats are there? And have you talked to Hakeem Jeffries about any of this?
Look, views vary widely on crypto among the members of the Financial Services Committee, and I would submit to you that the divide is not so much ideological as it is generational. I find that younger members, including younger Democrats, tend to be more open to the innovative potential of crypto and blockchain technology. But there are a number of Democrats, whether it be Josh Gottheimer or Wiley Nickel, who have an open mind and who understand the need for regulation. But I would leave it to others to characterize their own views.
Just to quickly follow up on it, I just want to bring up something that feels like ancient history in crypto, but really isn't, is that, Congress and many people in Congress received quite a lot of political donations from Sam Bankman-Fried. And there's been a lot of speculation that this has kind of dampened debate. This just like left a really bad taste in people's mouths. In your view, is that something that's still lingering?
For me, the FTX Ponzi scheme underscores the need for legislation. The lesson learned from the collapse of FTX is that companies like FTX, deregulated, over-leveraged, offshore companies, carry the greatest risk of losing customer funds. And so Congress has a vested interest in filtering out those companies and punishing those companies. But
specifically political donations to members of Congress. I'm just curious if you think that in some way shaped maybe people's views or interest in, you would imagine that would just leave a very bad sentiment towards crypto to people who accepted those donations. And then this all happened and some people were trying to give them back. And I just wonder if you think that shaped the narrative in any way.
Well, the members of Congress who received those donations were not aware of his wrongdoing. So it just strikes me as unfair criticism. But people are going to hold whatever views they want of Congress. It should have no bearing on our obligation to create a framework for protecting investors. The status quo has failed retail customers, and we have to replace the status quo with a rigorous but workable framework for regulating digital assets and protecting retail customers.
All right. Well, Lauren Boebert versus MTG, who wins?
Both of them are insufferable, but Lauren Boebert might be more insufferable. And apparently, Marjorie Taylor Greene is no longer sufficiently right-wing to be part of the Orwellian House Freedom Caucus.
You don't want to pick a winner on that.
Yeah, I think more highly of Gary Gensler than I do of the two of them.
I think that says something. All right, Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Take care.
That was New York Congressman Ritchie Torres. CoinDesk reached out to the SEC and Prometheum for comment, but we haven't yet heard back.